Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe, and I'm so very thrilled to welcome Christina Camarena to the podcast today for this special bonus episode celebrating the 20th anniversary of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which I believe is your favorite film. Is that right?
I mean, it is definitely one of my all-time favorite movies. I can never say the favorite about anything, but it's right at the top.
So when did you first see this movie? Do you remember? Did you see it in a theater? Did you see it at home?
No. We saw it at home and it had already been out for a few years.
So you didn't see it in 2001?
No.
Okay. It opened in limited release in mid to late July of 2001. And then it came to Reno, I want to say, like in late August, early September. Came a little bit later here.
Nope. So we heard about it a little bit later. It must have been at least a couple years old. A good friend told us about it. And so we watched it the first time at home, but we've seen it performed live twice.
Okay.
Once in San Francisco, once in Reno, which was a really fun performance. It wasn't like anyone famous. It was just a small troupe, but they did a great job.
Oh, cool.
But the one we saw, we got tickets. I really wanted to see Neil Patrick Harris. That was my dream. And by the time I was ready to make my dream come true, he had already left the show.
Oh, so who played the role in San Francisco? Do you remember?
This is terrible. Darren Criss.
Oh, Darren Criss from Glee.
Oh my gosh.
I love him.
It was so good. I'd never even heard of him.
Okay.
Walter and my best friend Aaron and I drove to San Francisco specifically to see it and got rooms, and it was absolutely spectacular.
Oh, that's so cool. I've probably
seen it like 100 times or more.
Yeah. I've only seen this movie one time 20 years ago, and then I watched it, and then I watched it again over the weekend. And it was definitely a different experience the second time.
Sure.
Because when I
watch it many times to really like get all the pieces.
Yeah. So this is my story about seeing this movie for the first time. So in the summer of 2001, I bump into the film critic at the Reno Gazette-Journal. And I asked him, is it possible for school credit? Could I be like your intern for the fall? And he agreed to it. And so I worked with him that fall. And the very first thing he invited me to go to was an early screening of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, like 2 or 3 weeks before it was even opening in Reno. He got like 2 tickets.
So cool.
He got no, I think it was 3 tickets, because it was very strange. It was a Monday morning at 9 a.m.
That's so weird.
And guess who accompanied me? I can't remember why, but my mother.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
And I'm 16. I'm 16 years old.
Movie.
I'm 16 years old.
Wow.
And I'm watching Hedwig and the Angry Inch at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning next to my mom.
With your mom. That is fantastic.
Neither of us knew what the movie was. Like, I think I vaguely was aware that it was a musical, and that was about it. And I'm like, I mean, some of the scenes in this movie, Christina,
are a little intense.
At 16, next to my mom.
So awkward.
The bathtub scene that I've never forgotten. That was the one scene that I'd never forgotten.
That's like the cringiest scene in the movie, I think. That's like the one where you're just like, I can't look.
So I'm like doing a little of that, right? And I always just like the movie itself. I remember I really liked when I watched it, but because of the experience of how I watched it, it was one of those kind of traumatizing experiences. And I just kind of forgot about it after a while. And then I was looking at what was celebrating 20 years, and I saw, ooh, Hedwig. That would be kind of fun to watch after I've now lived 20 more years. I feel like I could, appreciate the movie more, and I'll watch it by myself this time, not with my mom.
You should have invited her for the reunion viewing.
And I had such a better time. I really, really love this. And wow, I can see why you love it so much.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, this is our road trip soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like, we danced to The Origin of Love at our wedding. We love this movie. When we first discovered it, we would just have it on in the background all the time when we had parties at our house and stuff.
You would just play it in the back.
Yep. All the time. All the time.
Yeah. That's so cool. And what I love is that it's not necessarily a movie you discovered on your own opening weekend. It was like it took a couple years, and you had to have friends kind of bring it up.
I could remember We got married in 2006, and at that point I had probably seen
You loved it. Yeah.
30 times.
30 times.
So maybe it was, but we definitely didn't see it in the theater. So it had to have at least been once it came out on DVD.
So before we talk about the movie more, I wanted to just get a sense of like your interest in the musical genre. Like, is that a genre of movies you like to watch?
Yep, okay. I love musicals.
What do you love about musicals?
I'm a big fan. Two things, and Hedwig is, it's almost hard to even call it, and it is a musical because it's all about music, but it's not like the traditional like randomly on the street.
Right. It's
30 people know all the moves to a dance or whatever, right? It just revolves around music.
Yeah, it's like a drama about music, not so much a musical. You're right.
Right. But I love, especially when I was a kid, so my first musical that I remember is Jesus Christ Superstar, which is, I mean, it was so formative in my childhood.
Yeah, that's I've never seen that. It's coming to Reno at the Pioneer Center in the spring, I believe.
Oh my gosh.
So I think I want to go check it out.
That would be actually worth a trip for me. Like it was so important to me as a kid. It would come on every Easter on, you know, when I was 5 and 6 and 7. And I could sing that entire soundtrack on my own. Every year for my entire life, the weeks before Easter comes, I'm just listening to it over and over and over.
Yeah.
And the movie is so weird, but awesome.
Yeah,
right?
There's a movie version from 1973. So I'll be getting to that soon on the podcast.
So that's the one that I watched every year as a kid. It was always on. And I just remember thinking, like, it's like all these hippies show up in bell bottoms and there's tanks and there's guns. And I'm thinking, I mean, it's just such a weird sort of clashing, but also it's just so good.
Yeah.
And then the West Side Story, which I wasn't allowed to watch as a kid. I don't know how Jesus's death is less violent.
Well, yeah. What about West Side Story?
Whatever it was.
But you're not allowed to watch.
But I had the record, my parents' record, and so I knew every word to all the songs before I ever even saw it. And then when I saw it, like all the pieces came together. So that, and then of course the Sound of Music, Mary Poppins.
Yep, a lot of these are from the early 60s. That was a big time for musicals, right? So West Side Story is 1961, wins Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Mary Poppins, 64, wins Best Actress for Julie Andrews. Sound of Music, 65, wins Best Picture. So musicals are huge in the 60s.
So yeah, I mean.
So if I did film at 60.
Yeah. I mean, I had all those records when I was a kid. They were my parents. I still have the same records that I had as a kid, listening to all those soundtracks. And then I have those movies all on VHS tapes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love.
Did you know West Side Story, Steven Spielberg directed a remake coming in December?
I always feel weird about remakes. Although I know that not everybody agrees, but I love the new Mary Poppins. I love it.
Oh, Mary Poppins Returns.
Was afraid of it, but it's not a remake. It's different.
It's kind of like
it's like the next one,
semi-sequel kind of a thing. I like when it's not just a direct remake, like scene for scene. That's
because you can't do that with a movie like Mary Poppins. But I love it. And I don't know about a remake. But we'll see.
My favorite musical we just talked about in the podcast is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh,
that's my favorite.
No, I wouldn't even think of that as a musical.
Yeah, it's not. You know, it's like, not wall to wall music.
It is. Oh, I would say that's one of my favorite musicals too. I just hadn't even thought of it.
I mean, there are sections of that movie where they're not singing. It's not a movie where every 5 minutes there's a song and dance, but it does have like 6 big musical numbers. Yeah,
like great songs that I know all the words to. So I don't know why it didn't occur to me to think of that. But that's just in one of my all-time favorite movie categories, like Hedwig. It's just one of the best movies ever.
Yeah. And then more recent years, anything in like the last 20 years, musical wise, you've seen that you like?
You'd have to mention a few.
I love Chicago. Chicago from 2002.
Oh, I did. I loved Chicago. Yeah. And Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge from 2001, which I'm going to talk about here in a sec on my top 10 list of 2001.
Oh, I guessed it. Yay.
You got it. I also love Hairspray from 2007. Did you see Hairspray?
You know what? I have never seen Hairspray.
It's so blast.
I'm not familiar with the song.
It's fun. Yeah, that one. I like. Speaking of songs that I can just like, I know like all the words to. Definitely Hairspray from 07.
Oh, nice. But you know what? A movie that everybody always says is great or a musical that I hated?
Which one?
Rent.
Rent. No, the movie
theoretically
is okay.
It should be good. Like the concept about it.
I love the songs in it though.
I hated them.
You hated the songs in Rent?
I don't know what my problem was. If it was an off day, I've only seen it once. A student came to me after a gender studies class and was like, "You're gonna love this. It's so good." And to me, it just like would never end. It was excruciating.
You watched the movie?
Yes, and I loved a lot of
there's something off about the movie. It's not my favorite, but the show, I saw the show live and it was great.
I'll have to give it another chance.
There's nothing worse for me. There's nothing worse when someone says, Brian, you have to watch this movie. It's amazing. It's the best film of all time. You're going to love it. Watch it right now. Turn it on. Put it on.
I had to give it back to my student and pretend like it wasn't excruciating. Oh, yeah. It has some really interesting. I love the premise and like the story, I think, is really powerful. But for some reason, I just could not click with the music.
If it ever comes to Seattle or you have the opportunity to see it live in front of you, I do think it's a better experience that way.
I'm sure, always.
But so I did this last year when we talked about Miss Congeniality on a bonus episode, one of my favorite Sandra Bullock movies. Starting in 1996, when I was 12, I started putting together lists of movies on Microsoft Word, and I would rate every one.
I love it.
And then at the bottom of the list, I put my 10 favorites of the year, and I still have them to this day. Movie nerd.
Such a movie.
And every so there were 2 titles last year that really embarrassed me. And looking at the list here, I mean, not one that's like really embarrassing, but maybe 2 or 3 here. So here was my top 10 list for 2001. Number 10.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you remember any films pop out to you from that year? I mean, I'll tell you some titles.
I'm so bad at remembering years. So, I mean, I'm not like you. I would never be able to say, oh, that movie came out. Sometimes I'm like, maybe in the 90s.
Yeah. No, I just had dinner with some friends the other night, and there was a friend of a friend I had not met before, and she's into movies, and she started like asking me like, okay, what year did that come out? What movie won? Oh, she's like, okay.
Oh, and you knew all of them.
Who won Best Actor at the Oscars in 1977? And I didn't even flinch. I said Richard Dreyfuss in The Goodbye Girl. And she, I've never seen it. I mean, she was just like in awe.
Well, because she hasn't known you for a long time, right? Every time you do that, I'm always just like so impressed.
And she asked me, she said, God, that's, I mean, it's kind of useless information, right? I mean, what can you use that in? I said, a podcast. I do a podcast. I found what I could use that for.
No, you created the exact right place.
Yeah. That
let's hear the list.
Yeah, that or if they ever do film questions on Jeopardy, maybe I should try out.
Killing it. Totally.
All right, number 10, Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise.
I'm not a huge Tom Cruise fan. I don't think I saw that one.
Oh, it's good. Vanilla Sky, I'd actually probably rate it higher today. I'd probably put that like number 7 or 6. I think that's a great movie.
The early 2000s were when I was first becoming disillusioned with Tom Cruise. And so it's true. I mean, I loved him, of course, when I was a teenager. Everybody did. Top Gun and all these movies. And then I kind of started to be like,
Vanilla Sky is kind of like a mystery. It's kind of like surreal. It's Cameron Diaz's one of her best performances in it. And it's not your typical Tom Cruise movie. It's not a romantic comedy. It's like a weird, surreal movie. Yeah. Number 9, The Fast and the Furious.
Oh.
The first movie I put on my top 10. That I'd probably take off today. Although I do like how in the first movie, it's like actually about car racing. And now it's about how do we like fly to the moon? That's like
if you put all your lists side by side and every time a new Fast and Furious movie came out, it was on the list, I would be very worried for you. But I think the first one was really popular.
That's the only one that ever made a top 10 list. Fast 5, I loved. That got on my second 10, I think. But not
I've only seen the first one. I never.
All right, number 8 is called The Deep End with Tilda Swinton, filmed in Reno, Tahoe. Have you heard of The Deep End?
Nope. And
my mom and I, I think it was the summer of 2000, we drove to Tahoe to be extras in The Deep End, and we got there we got there a little too late, and they already had enough extras for the scene they were shooting, so we didn't get to be in it. but the movie came out the following year, and it's a really good thriller. It's a LGBTQ thriller.
Oh, I love thrillers.
Yeah, her son is gay and has like this secret life, and they live in Tahoe, and she like drives to Reno to like investigate her son's disappearance, or it's been 20 years. Did he die, or did he just disappear? I'm trying to remember. I think he just disappeared.
I'm going to find out when I watch it. And then I'll tell you.
But it's a solid little thriller, and it's cool because you see lots of exteriors in Reno and Tahoe. So that obviously added to it. Number 7, I would not put on my top 10 now, and that's Bandits with Billy Bob Thornton, Bruce Willis, and Cate Blanchett. It's like this kind of like funky comedy thriller where they're like robbing banks, I want to say.
Okay, all right.
So I mean, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in 20 years. Number 6, The Curse of the Jade Scorpion, directed by Woody Allen.
I have never heard of any. Plus Woody Allen. Ugh.
Woody Allen.
Yes.
I think I was the only person who loved that.
I saw one of his movies in the theater and I hated it so much.
And then that was it.
I almost never, only twice have I ever walked out of the theater. I mean, I will power through and I can always find.
Yeah, he's been, I've talked about it. I've talked about it a little bit. He's a kind of a tricky figure to because we kind of have to get to him at some point because his films of the 70s are really important. But it's like, well, maybe I'll just wait for Annie Hall.
Do we want to draw that much attention?
Not too much attention.
Right.
All right. Number 5 is probably the most obscure film on my list. It's a movie I'm sure nobody's heard of today, and that's Novocaine, starring Steve Martin. A thriller where he plays a dentist. It's like a weird, alternate sequel to Little Shop of Horrors. I was going to say, Little Shop of Horrors is one of my other favorite musicals. And I do. Whenever Little Shop of Horrors,
I'm writing it down.
Whenever Little Shop of Horrors comes up, and that's a movie I love. That's one of my top 5 favorite. Oh, and
musicals. My kids are obsessed with it too. Luckily, so we need to sing.
I showed it to some of my students in May. We had a couple days of. We had this thing called enrichment where we had kind of finished what they were supposed to do. We had a couple days, so I said, I'm going to show them Little Shop of Horrors, and they loved it. They loved it. 80s musical.
So good. Yeah. It's so good. It's just so weird.
But whenever it comes up, I say, check out this obscure movie from 2001. It's called Novocaine. It's Steve Martin, Laura Dern, and Helena Bonham Carter. And it's a really funny, snappy script. And he plays a dentist again. And it's like a thriller.
I'm writing it down. I have to see that.
Yeah. Check it out. It's cool. All right, number 4, Moulin Rouge, my favorite musical from 2001, which came out the same summer as Hedwig.
Wait, do you have a favorite musical from every year?
Probably.
Wait, I'm sorry.
No, not every year.
I don't think. I love Moulin Rouge, and I also saw that movie many times, but I would not place it above Hedwig, but I respect your choices.
So I did a bonus episode in June about Moulin Rouge with a guest, a costume designer. She works in film. She did the costumes for a horror film called Freaky, which came out a few months ago. It's her favorite movie, Christina, and she's seen it more than 300 times.
Wow.
I said, well, you mean like you're just, no, I've seen it more than 300 times.
I mean,
so she beats you on Hedwig. You haven't seen it 300, right?
Count. I haven't counted. I mean, is she counting only times where she literally sits down and watches it start to finish? Or just all the times it's on in the background? I might be able to...
she told this really moving story. She got really sick like a year or two after the movie came out, and her way to feel better for 6 months, she was really sick with something, and she had to just put on movies that would make her feel good, make her laugh, make her cry, do it. And she said Moulin Rouge was the movie for me.
I respect
and so
that.
And then later she worked for the director Baz Luhrmann on The Great Gatsby with Leonardo DiCaprio. She was the costume assistant for him.
Very
so it was
cool.
like a movie it's your favorite film, and then she gets to work for the director.
I know. Cool. That's very cool.
Did you ever get to work for John Cameron Mitchell?
Yeah, so a couple of months back.
You should have reached out to him.
I would be so schoolgirl, if I would just be oh my God.
He's all right, Christina, I need you to go do this. And you're like,
I wouldn't be able to handle it.
It's you.
We touched the same pen, right? Or whatever.
Touched my pen.
Oh, never wash this hand. It would be that kind of situation.
All right, number 3, I don't think it'd make my top 10. It'd maybe be in the second 10. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
I mean, those movies were really fun. I never got into Harry Potter the way other people.
I would say I loved the books the most when I was in high school, like 16, and the first movie really I was like, oh, this could be bad, and it really did not disappoint. It's a really fun first movie in the series.
I read the first book. I think I was the exact wrong age when it came out. Like I was just, I know that adults love the books and read them all through, but I think I was too like fresh out of being young enough for them, you know, or you have to be like, oh, that's for kids or whatever. and right when it came out. And so I did read the first one and I really liked it. And the kids and I and Walter watched the first few movies, and we might come back around to it because I think the kids are at a good age now.
Oh yeah, your son might want to check it out.
Yeah, so I might get into it, but I just haven't yet.
Yeah,
so we'll see how that goes.
All right, number 2 is Memento. Did you see Memento?
Love it. Own it. Yes.
Yeah, I watched that again for its 20th anniversary.
So weird. I love it
how boggles my mind how Christopher Nolan was able to put that movie together. Like I just don't, it's so confusing.
It's one of those movies that you can watch over and over. And I feel this way about Hedwig. There's always more depth to it. There's always something, it always clicks in a slightly different way. And that's the thing that makes it so fun to watch, which is part of why I'm surprised you could only watch Hedwig.
No, it's not that I didn't want to watch it again. I just forgot about it. I just forgot about it.
I think you'll find that to be true about Hedwig. What I land on at the end of that movie is slightly different every time.
Okay.
And it makes me think such deep thoughts about gender and life and identity and like how we find who we are and struggle and trauma. And Memento is similar. It's not as deep to me, but it was the same thing where we watched it many times because we were like, but what is happening? But what are we supposed to take away from this? And it was always a little different.
Yeah, it's definitely a puzzle, as is my favorite film of 2001, which is actually my second favorite film of all time. So those of you listening, trust me, we're doing a bonus episode on this one in the fall. I have to find a David Lynch fan.
The suspense is killing me.
My favorite film of 01, my second favorite film of all time, Mulholland Drive. Have you seen that or heard of that?
No, I knew it. I knew that about you. I remember. I love David Lynch. Mulholland Drive is one that I probably need to watch again. It was one that
it takes about, you need to watch it a good 3 to 4 times.
What's the one with the ear with Special Agent
That's
Dale
Blue Velvet.
That was my favorite movie for a long time.
Okay, yeah, that's one of my favorites too.
When the remake of Twin Peaks, or like the reboot.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of a falling out with David Lynch. It was so gratuitously violent against women. I got like 3 or 4 episodes in, and Twin Peaks is one of my favorite series. I own it. I've seen every episode many, many times, and we just couldn't do the reboot. It just seemed so.
They let him do whatever he wanted.
That's the problem. Twin Peaks was on TV. Regular TV back in the day.
And then Showtime gave him a bunch of money and said, do anything you want.
When I realized what he would do when he could do anything, I
had some issues. I had some issues, but he's one of my 3 favorite directors, Christina. His last movie.
Me too. I love him.
His last movie, Inland Empire, came out in 2006, and he had not done anything of real note since 2006. So to sit down for 18 hours of a new David Lynch project, it was 18-hour episodes, was just a thrill for me. I was just like, it's so cool to see something new from him. It had been so long.
Yeah. Oh, I was so cool. Excited. I mean,
and he worked with everybody in that show. Like he got the cast back from the original show. He got Laura Dern, he got Naomi Watts, he got all these actresses who had been in his previous stuff. I thought it was cool.
Especially Dale Cooper is one of my longtime boyfriends. I was obsessed with him. Obsessed.
Yeah. But Mulholland, my 2 favorite films are Sunset Boulevard and Mulholland Drive. My 2 favorite films are LA Streets. That's what I tell everybody.
I remember having a conversation with you before where you reminded me that I needed to watch Mulholland Drive again. I saw it once and I remember thinking I need to watch that again.
What's cool is my 2 favorite films are very much intertwined. Not only are they both LA Streets, but they're both about kind of like the demise of Hollywood dreams and kind of weird effed up relationships between men and women, and And it's like I love them both kind of equally. If I had to pick a favorite, it's Sunset Boulevard, just because
it makes sense though that those are the two you love the most, right? Because you love
yeah.
LA and the Hollywood.
Yeah.
You're
but there's
so
also something kind of seedy about
sinister,
that, and
super sinister,
and
yeah.
David Lynch especially really dug into that in a way that I've always admired.
That no one else can.
Yeah.
And he's so unique and he's so weird and awesome. I love him.
But so I don't know why is Hedwig not on that top 10? Should I change that list?
I would switch out the Fast and the Furious.
Fast and the Furious, you think is not as good as Hedwig?
Wait, well, I don't how dare you? I haven't seen a lot of the movies on your list, so but I would scoot Hedwig way towards the top, I would say.
All right, so let's talk about Hedwig. So why do you love this movie so much? Why are you like, I need to watch it 20th, 30th time? What is it about it that makes you keep coming back?
I mean, the music is absolutely fantastic. The glamour,
the costumes.
There's like some of those scenes where it's up close on Hedwig's face and the lips and the eye makeup and the wigs. They're just so.
And he's just such a striking, like physically, he's so striking,
gorgeous,
and just makes that character his own.
But the character is just so complicated, and the storyline is so unique, and it's so interesting, and it's so. I think when it came out for me, it was just so refreshing to not only have all the things I love, but also have such complicated characters and such sort of a queer story. It's just about like non-gender conforming and just kind of, you know, identity. And this is a thing that I teach a lot too in my gender studies classes. And so it was already something that at that time I was really starting to get interested in. And the storyline is just, I mean, there's so many great one-liners. It's just so interesting, right? It's just so.
Do you have your students watch the whole film, or do you show them clips, or what do you guys do with it?
Okay. They see the whole movie.
It's short. It's like 90 minutes. It's not very long.
Yeah, and you know, we have watched it in class before. I teach hybrid classes, so it's a perfect sort of like watch it on your own as that hybrid part, that at home part, and then come back and talk about it. And I think my part of why, and you'll see, I know I showed you this already, but on my copy you can see the little library sticker from when I put it on reserve. But I used my some of my funds last year to have my library purchase a copy so that my students can have it on reserve and see it there. And I think it really helps us have these conversations about gender and sexuality that are so much more complicated than what a lot of times many of my students have thought before, right? It's kind of hard. It's easy to like be on the blackboard and be like, it's not just man and woman, straight or gay, right? There's not everything is a binary. And sometimes it just has to be like a totally badass movie that everybody in the world should see. And that's part of why I assign it. Because I feel like everyone should see it. I think everyone should see it. Just like why I always make my students read Beloved, because everyone should read it. But then we can have these much more complicated conversations, because it's easy for me to say, look, sexuality does not rely on gender, right? Gender and sexuality are not these binaries, right? All these things, but that's hard for students to separate out when you live in a culture that's so binary and it's so rigid about gender rules and gender roles.
So you would say you would say this movie's very much ahead of its time for 2001.
Huge.
Right?
For me, it was just I felt so lucky that I'd even found this movie. Plus the history, right? It's like I was in middle school when the Berlin Wall came down. And for me, that was a huge part of my childhood. Like that was one of those big historical events, and this movie just intertwines like the real history with and when I watched it this time, I just really thought about it in a new way now that we have so much more gender fluidity in our culture, and you know, gay marriage is legal, and I feel like we've made some strides. We're still far from there, right? But we're moving towards these gender neutral bathrooms and safe places, talking about, you know, how to create safe places for trans people and all of these things that are really starting to come to a head. And when I watched this last night, I was really thinking about, I mean, part of what's so tragic about this movie is what Hansel had to go through,
Oh yeah.
To get out of of his like super oppressive life situation, right?
Yeah.
Like what Hansel, I mean, and the trauma of that escape. I mean, and it's just so deeply embedded in the history of oppression, essentially.
And I love him as a director here too, because he is not only the star, he wrote the screenplay and he directed the movie.
He is a genius.
And the way it's directed is really cool and flashy and interesting. And the way he does like flashbacks to when he's a child.
Yes.
Like he washes out the colors.
Yeah. And the music, the scene with where it's Hedwig and then Hansel back and forth in the oven.
The oven shot is amazing.
And the mom like throws the boiled tomatoes.
Yeah.
I mean, the humor in this movie where he's like, my mother threw me in a wheelbarrow and we headed east. I mean, there's just these moments that are so funny, but also really sort of painful and tragic and beautiful. And you see Hedwig being traumatized as a child and as an adult, and then traumatizing others. I mean, and I have a complicated relationship with Hedwig too. I mean, Hedwig, you know, Tommy is 17 in that bathtub, that cringy bathtub scene. And right. And Hedwig is at least in
his 20s. Yeah.
And then, you know, the way that what's Hedwig's partner's name? Yitzhak? I can't. You know, the emotional abuse that she puts her band members through. She withholds their passports. You know, you see how she's sort of repeating these abuse cycles.
Right. From what she learned as a kid.
Right. And then breaks free in the end. I mean, when Hedwig tears up Yitzhak's passport and you just see the pain, and then in the end, everyone's sort of freed, right? They're freed from these identities that that they feel like in some ways they've been forced to perform. Right? Like, do you think that these are some of the conversations I love to have with my students, because it's good for them to sort of get out of these binary traps, which is, does Hansel want to become a woman?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I was thinking about that because at the end of the film, she takes off the wig and takes off the makeup, and we see kind of the man in him. And the last shot of the movie is Hansel walking off into the darkness, completely naked Hansel, from behind.
Hedwig, yeah.
And so so it's kind of like you're in this kind of middle ground. You're not quite sure.
That's right.
What the character is going to do next. And that's was kind of haunting and interesting about it, I think.
I love that Hansel, Hedwig, whomever they end up being in the end, which we don't even really get to know. It's like this transformation in which all of this, everything is just stripped away. And they're able to just be their true, that's true self. It's not a thing, but do you know what I mean? It's like all the layers come free, and we see this person that is in a position in which they can truly figure out who they are. Right? There's no performance happening at the end. You see all this forgiveness in that final song. It's like, I mean, I tear up every time. In the last two songs, it's just so emotional for me, because you see Yitzhak being allowed to be who they are finally, right? And, you know, Hedwig being able to strip off this whole gender performance, this whole whatever it is that they've constructed, and just be. And it's in the song, man, woman, top and bottom, right? Like Hedwig was in the middle zone in which there really isn't a category for Hedwig. And that's part of what's so cool about it in the end is you can't, and why would you want to try to categorize this incredible creature that's just overcome all this trauma and is just stripped completely naked. I've had students say that the end is haunting, but I feel like the end is, for me, I just feel kind of it makes me feel at peace. Like Hedwig no longer has to be anything that anyone else wants
of Hansel to be. Yeah.
I mean, I don't, what's the name at the end? What's the gender pronoun? I have no idea. Right? Because it's just all stripped free, and Hedwig just is.
Yeah. But what I love about the movie, it's you know, when we talk about, in some ways it sounds like this like movie that's got a lot of heavy issues and it's going to be kind of a difficult watch. It's a very fun,
hilarious.
electric, it's a very funny film. I mean, the scenes early on where Hedwig is singing and dancing, and it always cuts, and they're always in these little skeezy places where there's like 6 people.
It's like Denny's.
And they're like at Denny's. There's shots of like overweight, like middle-aged couples.
I love it. They don't even know what's happening.
They're like eating their burger and they're kind of looking over it.
Ladies and gentlemen, a car wash. And Hedwig is like standing over this guy at his table, flipping the fringe on her skirt over his face. And people are...
I love that scene where they're
at the waters or something. But it's like a Denny's, right? It's just like random people are eating dinner.
And it's like, I mean, and I could see myself
about our sex change.
Like, operation. I mean, you know, this film was probably shot in 2000. I mean, I could see, you know, in the late 90s, like young me being with my parents out and about at some restaurant, and someone who looks like that is performing. I could see like, I could see like how that would be uncomfortable for a lot of people, especially in that time, right? In like 2000, 2001. Big time. And so that hits really like, I think that's handled well. I love that scene where he's at the music, where they're all at the music festival. And there's the one girl, and she's like, come sit down here. I'm going to tell you a story.
That's one of my favorite parts. That Hansel says, and I was still sleeping with mother. And it closes up on the woman's mouth, and it's just black lipstick and this huge smile. And she's like, come sit with me.
Yeah. For me, there were no lulls. There were no like, oh, this could be cut down 5 minutes. Like it's 90 minutes. It's very brief. It's a tight film. And I mean, it really is mostly wall-to-wall music. There's a lot of songs.
Every song kills. Every Hedwig and the Angry Inch song kills. Like, every word, every note. It's just so tight. I love it.
What's your favorite song? Is Origins of Love?
Origin of Love.
Origin of Love is your favorite. Yeah. Why is that your favorite of all of them?
Because it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's about, so the story of the song is what I love, right? Okay. The story is about this idea of like, we used to walk around. I'm not going to start singing because I'm terrible, but it's like people were essentially 2 people as one, right? And some were man woman, and some were man man, and some were woman woman, and it allows for this difference. And then, you know, they were split in 2, and the 2 sides lost each other. And how do you find love? How do you become whole? You have to find that other half. And if we're bad again, the gods will cut us in half again, and we'll be hopping around on one foot, right? Looking through one eye. But it's just all about finding that other half. And it's just such a beautiful song. I mean, Walter and I danced to it at our wedding, right? Like
that's so cool.
It's a beautiful song. We wanted to have it up on the projector, but
what would you have done? What would you have done if Walter had surprised you with John Cameron Mitchell in the Hedwig costume at your wedding?
I wouldn't have been able to handle it. My whole body would have just exploded with joy. Like I couldn't have. It's better that it didn't happen.
The wedding would have taken a bad turn after that. You would have been too.
I mean, it unable would have been joy, and then. Poof. But the thing about the song, right? The song is what the movie's about. Right, Hedwig thinks that she has to find her other half to be whole.
Yeah.
Right, and then there's the tattoo, you know, and then at the end, what Hedwig finds is that they can find the wholeness within themselves. Right. So exactly. To me, that's what the movie's about. Right. The trauma and the struggles have left Hedwig feeling fractured, and like there's some other part that will. Right. There's that great line where she's like, or did my other half just make off with all the good stuff? Right. Like she's trying to find this other part of her.
Yeah. Like at one point in the movie, at one point, the line is, I need to find my other half, but is it a he or a she?
Yep.
That's actually spoken in the movie.
Yeah. And that's the part where Hedwig says, or did they just make off with all the good stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the exact quote, but and that comes right at the end of the Origin of Love, right? And so it sort of sets it up as this is what it's about. Hedwig and Hedwig thinks Tommy's that other half, right? Hedwig has
why Tommy? Tommy, he's so young.
I got a whole thing.
He's so young. he's very attractive. This is 19-year-old Michael Pitt. So this is definitely a cute younger actor. And he still is today. I mean, that's probably the actor from the movie that's really gone on to do a lot. Like he was on Boardwalk Empire and he's been in a bunch of stuff.
I've seen him in a few things.
Yeah. So what do we think of that relationship with Tommy?
Okay, so this is why I love rewatching this movie, is because every time I land on something slightly different. And I love talking about it with my students because they'll come up with things that I haven't thought of. And then I'll watch it again and be like, oh yeah, totally. So last time I watched this with my students, somebody was talking about, was Tommy even real? Or is Tommy Hedwig's other half? Okay, so I don't fully buy into that idea, that possibility that Tommy's not even real. But this time when I watched it, I was seeing Hedwig. Think about at the end how much alike they look.
Oh, right? Yeah, no, and this kind of dreamlike. The last scene of them together is very dreamlike.
And then Hansel, or whomever that person is at the end, has the silver cross, the silver plus sign. It's not a cross. It is a cross. I don't know if it's a cross.
Yeah, something like that.
This is what, when Hedwig names Tommy Gnosis, she takes the silver and she draws it on his forehead, and that becomes sort of his symbol when he's famous. And in the end, they face to face and they look super similar. Their hair is the same. Their outfit is the same. They don't have shirts on. Tommy is singing the matching, like the reply song. And then when Hedwig reappears in the Bilgewater's in Times Square, Hedwig has the cross on the forehead.
Okay.
And then I was thinking about how Hedwig is sort of shaping Tommy into he's sort of like a lump of clay. Right? Yeah. He loves music. He's wide open. He wants to break free from the singing guitar at church genre, right? And Hedwig shapes Tommy into this superstar.
Yeah.
Right.
Like a whole different look. When Tommy comes back with the new hair and the new outfit, it's like, holy cow, that's the same character.
But right. And so I almost this time was thinking like Hedwig makes Tommy into that piece of her that she lost when she had to leave East Berlin, right? So she has to, as her mother says, I always thought one needs to leave a little piece of oneself, right? And then Hedwig has this Hansel has this botched sex change operation and becomes Hedwig.
Yeah. And
never gets to be that other person that they might have been, but sort of turns Tommy into that expression of that I don't know. I haven't thought it all the way through, but
yeah. And the other line I wrote down was Tommy says to her, I love you. And she says, then love the front of me, honey.
That's one of the most quoted lines in my household from the movie.
You say that?
All the time.
Love the front of me, honey?
Walter says it all the time. Whenever I'm like, we sort of are like teasing each other or whatever, and we get a little snarky, he'll be like, love the front of me. And I always reply with, I can't.
That's so funny. That's the other line I wrote down.
Yeah, so there's I don't think that Tommy, I think Tommy is a real character, but also to some extent, he sort of becomes the expression of Hedwig. Hedwig shapes him into some piece of herself that she can't be. Okay. Because she's become Hedwig. I don't know.
Yeah, that
came to me last night and I thought it was really interesting.
That bathtub scene is too realistic for him to not exist.
Right. Yeah. There's like no way he's not real. But this idea of like what he means to Hedwig.
Yeah.
Why is it so painful? Tommy gets to be the thing that Hedwig potentially could have been.
Yeah.
And Tommy takes it all, takes the fame, the songs, the look, everything that Hedwig created, and is a superstar and leaves Hedwig behind. And once again, Hedwig is just left behind.
Yeah.
And the whole struggle is Hedwig trying to regain the song and the fame, but really it's to regain oneself and what was stolen. There's that scene where at the end, or that line at the end where she says, I gave a piece to my mother, I gave a piece to my man, I gave a piece to the rock star, he took the good stuff and ran, right? That loops back to the beginning when Hedwig is talking about, did my other half just take all the good stuff and leave me behind? And then in that final scene, Hedwig gets to take it back. Or Tommy actually offers it back. And Tommy in that final song too acknowledges the fact, like, I was just a kid. Like I couldn't understand what I was taking from you.
Do you know how much time has passed when we meet Tommy the rock star? Like, has it been years? Has it just been a few months?
I have no idea. I think years, not a few months, right? Because Tommy has to make it huge.
Yeah. So it's been probably 2 to 3 years.
A few years. That's what I imagine. That's what I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I feel like that relationship in the movie is so pivotal. I mean, it's not a throwaway storyline. I don't think the movie is as good without that relationship.
It couldn't exist, right? Because Hedwig is essentially, and it took me a long time. Not in my first watch, I didn't even fully understand that what they were literally doing was stalking Tommy's concert, right? Like, they were going to whatever weird random restaurant was right next to the stadium where Tommy was performing all of Hedwig's songs that they wrote together, and literally following them across the country, trying to get sort of recognition for the part. And in the end, Hedwig finally is able to be whole, right? To be acknowledged for what she's done, to be able to sort of throw off all of the performance and all of the layers, the clothes, the makeup, the wig, all the things, and just strip it all free and just be like, who knows, anything after that.
Yeah, one thing I wrote down was, I said, you know, the Oscars now have a category called hair and what was it? It's makeup and hairstyling. They did not have it in 2002. I'm like, this movie probably would have been nominated for that category.
There's a couple of scenes that I really noticed last night. One is my favorite Hedwig looks. One is the Menses concert one where she's sitting there and she's got the hair like crimped and the makeup is just perfect.
She never looks the same in any.
And she has those big sleeves and those sparkly pink pants. And then the one where Luther leaves her in the trailer in the middle of Junction City, whatever, Kansas, wherever they are. And but she just looks amazing.
No, there's not, I don't think there's a scene in this movie where I'm like, oh, she could look a little better. I mean, she's just always striking.
Part of what's amazing in the Wig in the Box one is how many looks Hedwig goes through just in that one song, and they're all killer.
That's my favorite song in the movie. That's the song I Shazammed, Christina. I said, this is great.
It's so good. I love Sugar Daddy. I love Wig in a Box.
And Wig in a Box is the one. Isn't that the song where they actually have a momentary sing along? Like there's actually like words.
They all pop in the box, and the little wig follows the words. Put on your makeup. I said I wasn't gonna sing, so I'm gonna try not to. It's so
that was
good,
great.
Though.
But yeah, there's not a bad song in the bunch, and it carries you along into this like really interesting, deep story. It's not Hairspray, where it's mostly just kind of bubblegum. You know, it has like the movie Hairspray has some like important themes about racism and things like that. But Hedwig and the Angry Inch, it's like using music to bring us into all of these really important discussions we need to have about gender. And
it's amazing. And
it's just the way that the fact that he directed the movie too, his first movie, like this is his first film he directed, kind of amazing. I've never understood how you could be the star of a film and direct it at the same time, especially first time out. How do you even do that?
I mean, and the music and his vocals and like everything, every to me, every piece of this movie is perfect. Like it's just, he's an incredible genius. I don't even know. It's just a masterpiece. I think. It's a masterpiece.
So do you know anything about the origins of it? So it started as a 1998 off-Broadway musical. Is that right? In like 98?
I should know more about one of my favorite movies.
So he wrote the book to the musical and he wrote the screenplay to the movie, but the music and lyrics were by Stephen Trask. Is that right?
I saw that last night when I was paying attention to sort of half paying attention to the credits as they were going down.
Yeah. So Mitchell did not do everything.
But like still.
Yeah. But he has to perform. He has to perform. He has to perform those songs in a way that really just sell those lines and become that character. And I think it helps that he had performed that on stage for however long, 2 years, whatever it was, before they made the movie. because then he can really inhabit that character. I think if he had not been a part of the stage production, then it wouldn't be, I don't think he would have been able to do everything he does for the movie.
I mean, he's so Hedwig. Like, I was a little worried that I would be resistant to someone else being Hedwig, but I was so, and like, I just love Neil Patrick Harris. So I really wanted to see him performing Hedwig, even though I thought if anyone can make me overlook the fact that it's not John Cameron Mitchell, it would be Neil Patrick Harris. Plus they both have 3 names. So it's like the perfect switch. And then I missed my chance, but Darren Criss was fantastic. I mean, so good.
You have to be great to make it work, right?
You have to be able to kill it. I mean, it's
you can't just half-ass that one.
No, I mean, the role, the character is just so complicated, so deep, and so, like, I mean, you just don't get characters that are this complex. Like the whole life story, everything that Hedwig has been through, you can see playing out in the things that the choices she makes and the things she does in the movie. It's just incredible.
Yeah. I wonder if this is a show that's just constantly touring somewhere around the world, or does it have its moments?
I mean, like, we saw it in the Reno last 5 years before we moved. That was 3 years ago.
Oh, it played in Reno 3 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, we saw, there was a live production. Walter and my mom and I went.
Was it at Pioneer Center?
No, it was at some weird random, off, I want to say it was off California.
Oh, it wasn't Pioneer. Okay.
It was a small production. It was not like I don't think it was a local group. They were touring, but it wasn't like some huge group.
Okay.
And it was a small production, and it was very intimate. It was like seeing Rocky Horror. Oh no, I know exactly where it was. Wait a minute. What's that? Was it at Reno? What's the awesome little was it at the
Bruca Theater? Was that the one where you go downstairs?
Yeah, that place. We saw Rocky Horror there. It was so much fun.
Yeah, that's a small theater.
I don't even think it was at the Bruca. Okay. It was some random place. I would have to research it, but it was very intimate and it was awesome.
I think this is one you could do in a very intimate setting of just a small audience. It doesn't have to be a huge production by any means. I think you can tell it. That was the best thing
about the Bruca is you were like right in the middle of the action.
They're like acting right here.
Yeah. They're like sitting in your lap. And you're like,
Hedwig eventually sits in your lap and you're like,
okay. Hedwig was all
I'm a part of it.
Hedwig in the Reno one, Hedwig was doing the car wash in the audience. I mean, Hedwig was all over. It was really fun.
Well, maybe I'll have to perform that at some point, Christina. Would you come see if I did it?
I would absolutely. I would sing every word along with you. When we saw it in San Francisco, I mean, there were times where the audience was just singing. I mean, it was just like a big along.
If I ever perform as Hedwig, I'll definitely come sit in your lap as I do one of the songs.
You promise? You promise? Okay.
I haven't really talked about this. It is like there's a little kernel in me. I loved acting as a kid. I took two theater classes in college. And there's a lot of cool theater around Reno. Like it's starting to percolate.
Yeah.
Like maybe I might try one.
That would be so
perform
fun.
In a show. It's been percolating, Christina. I don't know if I'll have the guts, but I kind of like the idea, you know, because they usually rehearse, I think, later in the evening, and I teach until
they have to have like real jobs.
Yeah, and I'm usually done teaching around 3:30. So I'm like, well, maybe that's something.
Values artists.
It's something that I'm considering.
Oh, it would be so fun. I was the Cheshire Cat in the McQueen High School production of Alice in Wonderland. When I was a senior in high school. I was also a greaser in the Outsiders. We did the Outsiders. And then I never did it again, but it was so much fun.
My biggest regret about high school was I never performed in one of the shows because I did journalism instead, and my focus
do so much.
My focus was journalism those 4 years, and I just never. And I remember at the time I said, if they do Little Shop of Horrors, I will do that.
You have to.
I will play any role. I mean, I'd like to play the dentist, but I would play any role.
Yeah, because he's the best. I was an orchestra and theater kid in high school mostly. So
yeah. So I'll keep an eye out if Hedwig comes to town and they're looking for.
How fun! It would be so fun.
You would definitely. I think I would get you to Reno for that. Right?
Oh, I absolutely in it. I would already be in my car right now if you said it was tomorrow. I'd be like, okay, let's do the podcast.
That'd be a surprise, right? The end of our podcast is me like on stage.
Oh, I would just be so happy.
So I wrote down a couple other things about this movie. Did you know that the songs were recorded live on the set? This was not a lip syncing movie.
I actually was thinking about that last night, and I was thinking, there's no way they have to be singing. It seems
it's
very
too intimate.
Authentic.
It's too real and camera on. Like I don't. Yeah, this movie wouldn't have made sense to record everything before shooting and then they just lip sync it. I think you would tell on this one.
And it's so
too indie and intense.
And it's so like the scene, for example, where the car wash scene, the Sugar Daddy song, and then the Bilge Waters. It's like, I don't feel like you could have that intense of a scene. I mean, like a huge fight breaks out, right? Mm-hmm. The one where the fight breaks out. Oh no, that's the Sex Change Operations song, right? But like the intensity of these moments, it's right. How could they just be pretending like the music was happening? You know, right?
Yeah. But it's just, it's insane to me to think.
It's like craziness.
Okay, so he's not even lip syncing. So he's directing the film. He's in costume. He's acting. Yeah. He has to remember the song and deliver the song in front of the camera. And he's thinking about the shots. And I'm just like, that's too much for me.
Well, I think that comes back to your point about why it was so important that he'd already been doing it.
For on 2 years or whatever.
He had already fully embodied this.
That's
character.
true. So by the time he's shooting the movie, he knows
Hedwig.
the lines.
He was Hedwig. Yeah.
So he could really focus on the filmmaking and not. He'd already prepared so much over 2 years. So that
probably for 2 years he was envisioning how this movie would play out. Right.
Oh
he'd been building it.
Yeah. And I hope, this is kind of a smaller kind of a show that I don't think it ever made it to Broadway in 98, 99.
Oh,
back then with Mitchell. So I'm imagining I couldn't look up like getting the funding for the movie. I'm sure was not easy.
Yeah, that's a good question.
How do you sell?
You couldn't find anything on that?
I could I saw it had a $6 million budget. This was not a $500,000 movie. Like this had a significant $6 million budget for an independent film. So it had to come from somewhere. Did they think that enough people had heard of the show, or because this is not a movie that's going to pull in audiences everywhere in 2001? And funny, like crazily, this movie, did you know this? It was playing in limited release around the country in July and August. And then it did its nationwide release on Wednesday, September 12th, 2001.
Oh my God. Talk about timing.
And it flopped and nobody saw it. And the movie
nobody saw anything. Everyone was too traumatized.
The movie it came to about $3 million. So it lost money. The movie lost money. Can you believe that? This really, important film from 2001. Definitely a cult movie.
Since then,
I don't know how that works. Like, I'm assuming they eventually made their money back through home video because everybody rented it and bought it. Yeah.
And CDs
of the soundtrack,
went
and then
back
the show.
To Hollywood.
So I don't know how that works.
Broadway.
Like if you invest in the movie Hedwig and the Angry Ants, the movie flops, does not earn its money back. Do those investors see their money back eventually when the home video blows up and when the show goes to Broadway with Neil Patrick Harris? I'm not sure.
I would hope that the investors would look at this and realize how important this movie is, that it's not just about making money, that it's about changing culture. And to me, it does way more important work than just let's make some money on a movie, right?
Yeah, I don't think this is the movie you invest in to get rich.
Right. That's what I'm saying, right? Like somebody who was like, this is important and this needs to be made.
Yeah. So the film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January of 2001. That's when people first saw the movie. And it won 2 of the big awards there, Best Director and the Audience Award. The Audience Award is the one award at Sundance that is decided not by the jury members, whatever. It's decided by the people who matter. It's decided by the people in the audience. I remember I went to 2 Sundance Film Festivals. At the end of every movie, I can't remember what it was in like 2003, 2005. It was like, I think we all got a slip and it was like, give the movie between 1 and 5. And then they basically just count up all the movies, all the scores. And the one that has the highest rating gets that award. And Hedwig was the movie from 2001.
Sure. Yeah. So good. I mean,
yeah,
it's so good.
So
The difficulty with Hedwig was probably just getting it in front of people's faces.
yeah,
Even for my students who are like, I don't get it, or I who have a hard time with the movie, they always say they're glad they watched it. Even if they don't know what to make of it yet, even if they're sort of resistant to some of the things we're talking about in class and some of the things in the movie, I've never had a student say, I'm sorry I watched that. They're always like, it's so thought-provoking, even for the students. And a lot of those are students who would have never picked this up on their own. Right. And yet it's it's very sort of mind-blowing for a lot of my students to watch this movie. Right?
Oh, I bet, especially today. I feel like this is a movie that might have been unsettling for some younger people 20 years ago, but now I feel like this is like an essential film for young people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
Like in high school, especially. And then the other thing was the big nomination it got was John Cameron Mitchell got a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor in a Musical Comedy.
Fantastic.
But the movie did not get any Oscar nominations. Okay. Did not get any. Didn't get costume design.
I know you love the Oscars a lot more than I do, but you know that's all.
It's all bullshit.
It doesn't. No, not well, sort of. But also the Oscars is dominated by certain kinds of people.
Yeah, especially in 2001, also, 2002.
Yeah, and it's not.
And they look down on movies that flop.
Movies,
yeah. They don't like movies that don't make money.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not just about what's the best movie.
Yeah. It's probably a case of not enough people saw it who actually voted for the nominations. It's probably what happened. I don't think it's a matter of everybody saw Hedwig and just didn't think it was worthy. I think it was just not enough people saw it.
We all know that the Oscars don't always choose the best movies. That's all. I mean, this isn't the kind of movie like this, especially then, this isn't the kind of movie that can fit carefully into the kinds of boxes that the Oscar wants movies to fit into.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Like it's not the Titanic. And I will tell you, this movie's way better than the Titanic. But I know, isn't that a movie that won like 1 million awards that I never really liked that much?
Yeah, it made like $1 billion or no, 1.8 billion.
And I love Leonardo DiCaprio and I love Kate Winslet.
That was definitely the movie. The movie to invest in for what was Titanic.
Right. Hopefully the investors from Hedwig also invested in that, and then they got all their money back and more. Yeah. Right. But don't you imagine that people with all that money are the ones who are like, but also this film is worth it.
Oh, yeah.
I might not get my money back, but it's worth it. And I'm a gazillionaire. And so
I feel like there are films like that every year. Films that I just watched one recently about abortion called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Oh, you have to watch this movie.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
Write it down. It made my top 5 of 2020. It was great. Just really
it was on my radar at one point.
Emotional, riveting, intimate drama. Just the most extraordinary performance of the two lead.
Wait,
really
who's in it?
It doesn't have any name actors in it. It's like a small indie film. Yeah, but that is an example of a just absolute tremendous movie, well written, directed, acted, that did not get any nominations at the Oscars, and I couldn't believe it.
I just got to get on the right radars, right? Yeah. How do you get on the radar? By making $8 gazillion.
Yeah,
and then they're like, "But is it good?"
Yeah. So there are these movies every year that maybe not enough people see. It doesn't get a lot of awards recognition, but it's like I'm so happy it's like a out
slow
there.
Boil. Yeah.
I'm happy it exists, and that's definitely Hedwig.
Yeah, for sure.
So anything else you wanted to say about Hedwig? I would recommend if you're like me and you saw it 20 years ago and you've maybe kind of forgotten about it, or you haven't check it out. It's really worth another look for its 20th anniversary.
It is absolutely worth watching and rewatching and learn all the words to the songs, and it's a movie worth being obsessed with.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to end with just talking a little bit more about John Cameron Mitchell's career. So I am shocked that you love this movie so much, but you have not sought out the other 3 films he directed. They're not. I mean, what's wrong with me? They're not that similar. The only one that's a little bit similar is Short Bus, his follow-up.
Short Bus. That's right. I have to write that down.
Which came out in 2006, 5 years later. The movie was very controversial at the time because it actually shows real people having sex in the movie.
Like having actual sex.
Yeah. So that's unusual.
As opposed to what, mannequins? Or you said real people. I was like, what?
No.
Oh, they're like,
No,
normally they would
I
be
said,
faking it, right? Okay, real
in a
real
movie, in
people
a
having
normal
real sex.
movie,
I got it.
they fake it, but they actually
Right.
shot some of the sex scenes in the movie are
That
real.
is
And
a
so
lot
it's, you
to
know,
handle.
it's not a pornographic
Right.
film. It's an artistic, visually stunning movie that I love. And speaking of music, Christina, I mean, I've been listening to that soundtrack to Short Bus for 15 years.
Okay, so Short Bus
It's one of my
what
favorites.
Hedwig is to me.
It's
I'm gonna have to watch it.
It's not a movie you should put on with the kids around.
No, I got that memo already.
But it's, you know, it's about, you know, every gender, every, you know, sexuality, and it's just a great cast of mostly unknown actors. There might be
John Cameron Mitchell in it?
I do not think it's been a few years. I don't think he's in it. I think he just directed it. I think he wrote and directed Short Bus, but he's not in it. He might show up briefly. I don't think so, though. It's a big ensemble of actors and about relationships, and just a really fantastic film. Good. Check it out. And then the most recent film he directed, I didn't like that much, and that's How to Talk to Girls at Parties with Elle Fanning and Nicole Kidman.
That actually kind of sounds familiar.
And it's got like some cool, crazy visuals. The story didn't really draw me in as well as his other ones. But the other film he directed, which is very kind of stark and simple, it does not have the flash of his other films, and that's Rabbit Hole, starring Nicole Kidman and Aaron Eckhart. Nicole Kidman got an Oscar nomination for Best Actress in the Leading Role.
Really?
Came out in 2010. It's about dealing with grief. They have a young boy who's, I believe he's run over across on the street right in front of their house. And it examines the grief of those following months. And it's a really devastating movie.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that one. That sounds
tremendous. I remember the performance by Nicole Kidman. It's one of her best. It's really great. And it's like, it's not a movie you would think that the director of Hedwig and Short Bus would have made.
Right, that it's so different.
And it's like, who thought of him to direct this movie?
Right.
It's like an interesting idea. He does not give it that flash of the first two films. It was kind of
so
interesting.
So no one has like solid red sparkly lips with
no, it's a very just in terms of its directing and its cinematography, it's beautiful, but it's very just it's very restrained. He does not try to make it a Hedwig Short Bus kind of movie. Because of the subject matter, wouldn't make sense.
Right, you can't. That would be really weird.
Yeah. And then he's popped up in things. My partner and I loved The Good Wife, which aired for 7 seasons.
I haven't seen that
with
one.
Juliana Margulies and Christine Baranski and John Cameron Mitchell. I want to say he was on 4 or 5 episodes as just a total douchebag, and he was great.
Yeah, that's how he is in Shrill. Well, no, I wouldn't say. I don't think douchebag isn't the word I would use, but in Shrill, I love him. He's 80 Bryant's boss. He owns the newspaper or it's not a newspaper, it's a magazine, it's an online magazine, and 80 writes for him, and he's just like so self-centered and narcissistic.
That's how he is on Good Wife.
Sassy. I love his character.
And that's when I think I started thinking about Hedwig, because I'm watching it, I'm like, where have I seen that actor before? It's Hedwig.
Yeah.
And then that got me starting to think about like maybe looking at the movie again, and then I saw it was coming up in 20 years. I said, oh, that's when I'm gonna watch it.
I remember somebody telling me that was their favorite movie. Who was it?
So I don't know. So we'll see. I don't know what he's working on right now. I don't know if he's directing a film in the next couple of years, if he has some acting projects. Do you think he'll ever return to that role of Hedwig on stage? Do you think that's done?
I don't know if I could handle it.
You never know.
I mean, if he returned to it, I would do almost anything to get there.
Yeah. Because Glenn Close was in the stage version of Sunset Boulevard in 1994 to 95, something around there. And then that was it. And then she came back and did the role again in 2017. And I got to see it. I went to my partner for spring break, got me tickets to go to New York we were there like 4 days. And he's not big into Broadway, but I said, okay, we're gonna see one. And
see one every time you're in New York.
After we had made the decision to go to New York, like a few weeks later, the news dropped that Glenn Close.
It wasn't even for that.
No, we were just going already, and I was trying to think about what show should we see. And then like a few months before, and then Glenn Close dropped the news that she was returning to the role of Norma Desmond on Sunset Boulevard on Broadway.
How cool.
And she was going to be performing that week. We were there I couldn't believe it. And we got great seats.
Fantastic.
And it was a treat to see. I'd heard of the show. I'd never seen it like on YouTube or anything. And to watch my favorite film on the stage with Glenn Close in the role was very cool. I'll never forget that.
I saw Chicago live on Broadway in New York, and it was amazing. And it was supposed to be Bebe Neuwirth, who I was so excited about, and it was her understudy, and it was still fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And we were close enough. I mean, I was getting like sweat was getting flung on me as they danced around.
Our live shows coming back to Seattle, Christina? I'm so excited to see live theater.
I haven't heard anything yet. I have no idea.
We have Broadway coming to Reno starting in November with Hamilton in Reno.
Oh, yeah. What? Why not when I was there? Why not me? Right? Like, I'm dying to see Hamilton.
The tickets were gone in 2 seconds, so I'm sure. I don't know if I'll get a chance to see it, but my mom and I are trying. I love seeing theater with my mama. It's always my date to the theater.
I love that. That's wonderful.
All right. Well,
I was just gonna say one more thing. Walter and I saw Kinky Boots at
that played in Reno too.
At the Pioneer. Yeah, it was so good. It was so good. It was fun.
I love live theater. I hope by the end of 2021 I get to see a really great show live in theater again. It'd be so much fun.
I also really missed the ballet, so I'm hoping that's going to come back to Seattle soon.
Yeah, hopefully. And I love Seattle, Christina. I think we need to find a show to go see together or something at some point. I want to go to Seattle. I haven't been in a few years. Such a great town. All right. Well, thanks, Christina, for being on this bonus episode about Hedwig. This was so fun. Yay. Christina has been my guest before for a movie she does not like quite as much as Hedwig, and that's Plaza Suite, which dropped in April. So check that out for a movie that she really liked to destroy.
I was gentle.
in all the best ways.
I restrained myself. I just want to say that. For the record.
We also talked about Defending Your Life, the great Albert Brooks comedy from '91. That episode is on YouTube, so check that out. So this is technically your third appearance on the podcast. Okay. Always fun to have you, Christina.
I'm a regular.
Anything you'd like to promote or tell our listeners where they can find your work online? Anything else?
I mean, it's been a crazy year, so I don't have a lot of new stuff going out. But my college where I work is hiring 2 tenure-track English faculty. So that's the thing I was going to talk about. Cool. At Olympic College in Bremerton. We're about an hour and a half from Seattle, on the other side of the Sound. And that's posted on Higher Ed Jobs right now. So check it out.
Cool. So this episode will be dropping at the end of July. Will it still be open?
Yeah, it should be. I think that'll be just right.
So maybe two of the Film at 50 listeners will get those jobs.
Wouldn't that be amazing? And then the next time you have me on, I better be ready to say that I finally have something new coming out. I think the last time I had just had
don't even get me started, Christina.
Getting Old Tastes Like had just been published in Minerva Rising, and I was supposed to read from it at AWP in San Antonio that I still went to.
Do you know where AWP is next year? Are they going to do it?
That's in
Philadelphia.
I will be there.
In the spring?
Yep.
Ooh, might have to check that out.
Meet me there. Yeah, I was supposed to read and I didn't get to, and then COVID happened and I haven't written a word in like a year and a half. So
no, don't get me started. I've written a few stories in the last year and I'm still waiting to hear. I've got a lot of places I've sent my stuff to. It's just a long waiting game.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, but thanks
so much. We both have real jobs.
Yeah, real jobs help. When you're waiting 6 months to hear back from a literary magazine or a literary agent. You're like, well, at least I have the 9 to 5 job. I got a paycheck. Health benefits, always fun.
Big time.
All right, so thanks, Christina, for being here, and thanks to all of you for listening to the special episode about Hedwig and the Angry Inch. We will catch you next time on Film at 50.